So thank you very much for coming to this interview. Please first introduce yourself and tell us the reason why you came to Japan.
Yeah, okay. My name is Sarah, and I came to Japan because I love the Japanese language, and I had studied it as my major in college. I actually started studying Japanese in high school, so for about 2 years before I went to college. And I really wanted to see if I could live and work in Japan after graduating, and so it all worked out.
What is your hometown in the United States?
I was born in New Jersey, but I spent most of my childhood in Maryland, in a suburb near Washington, D.C. So my actual high school and middle school were inside the Washington, D.C., the city, but our home was in Maryland. So when people from Japan ask me where I'm from, I say I'm from Washington, D.C. because they know where that is. It's easier to explain.
Okay. What are the main differences between your hometown and Tokyo?
I guess the main difference is that it's easier to be independent in Tokyo. Any city in Japan, actually. Like, I lived in smaller regional cities for quite a few years before I came to Tokyo. But my experience is always that you don't need a car to get around. You can get anywhere you want to go as long as you can read a map and do your research online. Like, I can drive, but it makes me kind of nervous. And so in the US, I feel a lot more limited where I could go. But I feel like I can go anywhere in Japan as long as I know the way by train.
And what are the biggest differences between the people here and the people there?
I guess just, it's sort of stereotypical, but like the Japanese style of politeness makes for a very different experience in any restaurant or convenience store or a gas station or anywhere you choose to go. And at this point, I've become so used to being to that sort of interaction with people that it feels foreign to me to go back to the U.S. and interact, with say waiters, waitresses, the way they act. Yes, it's not really a bad or good difference. It's just like two different styles of dealing with people. But I think that's maybe what strikes a lot of people is being really different when they first come. But once you get used to it, it's really comfortable.
Okay. Now, the image you had about Japan before coming, did it change a lot, or is it different now?
It's hard to say. Well, I first came to Japan. I went to Yamanashi-ken for about 6 weeks when I was in high school, when I only knew a little bit of Japanese. And so at that time, I had this. I guess to the extent I had an image of Japan, it was a mixture of like Murakami Haruki books and like manga and anime. But I'd also my mother's Asian. She's Korean, and so I'd kind of grown up with a lot of I grew up eating like white rice and like anpan and that kind of thing. So I can't say that anything really struck me as being different from what I had imagined it would be. It's just that there was experiences I didn't know about until I saw them. But there's nothing that really clashed with any pre-existing image I'd had.
Okay. What are your favorite things about Japan and something that you don't like a lot?
I think one thing I do love about Japan is how safe it feels, especially living like alone as a woman. I've had jobs where I had to walk home very late at night through like dark streets, and I never felt unsafe. And that's really a special experience in many ways. I think you really couldn't have that same feeling of safety in even normal in safe areas in safe cities in the U.S. That's just not how it is. And it's not like the U.S. is some scary place, but I don't know. There's something very special about the level of like peacefulness in Japan that is very hard to replicate elsewhere. And so that's something that I think is really, really special. And also just the way people treat their surroundings, I think, with a little extra consideration and care. And then that's the same as how like when you're at a convenience store or whatever, people interact with you a bit more formally than they would in the US. And then by the same respect, things like dividing the garbage is annoying, but does show kind of level of care and appreciation for like the spaces around you. And the same goes for like how clean everything can seem to some foreigners, compared in some cases like compared to the subway in the US, the subways in Japan are like really quite pristine. And so it's a nice environment to be in, a nice atmosphere to be in. So I really like that. I guess what I didn't like so much was when I was living in smaller cities, people would like kind of stare a lot more. And I never got it that bad because I have dark hair, so if someone sees you from behind, it doesn't they don't notice as much. But like there'd be times I'd be kind of living in the countryside and be such a small area that they won't even have ticket machines at the stations. It's just like empty. So they just trust you to buy a ticket, walk through. And so in cases like that, people really, really notice if you're not Japanese. And most of the time I could kind of ignore it, but sometimes it was kind of like, it's a little bit tiring because people are always noticing everything you do, even if they don't say anything to you about it. So you feel like you have to be really careful.
Let's talk about the role of women here in Japan and in your city. Here is a little bit strict. It's like black and white. It's very defined. There are some check marks that women must accomplish to be considered successful. And if they don't, they might get depressed or anxious, some of them. So how is this affecting you, or how is this related to you as a woman and foreigner working in a company in Japan? And how does it work if you go back to your city?
I think that's in some ways, one of the lucky things about coming to Japan as an adult. And that I love Japan, I love living here, and there's very little that I don't like about it, but I don't think I'm happy that I had like a childhood growing up as a girl somewhere else. I'm a pretty big feminist myself, and so if I sit down and think about it, there's a lot that maybe I think could probably be improved about, say, for example, maternity leave and like the way women are treated in the workplace in Japan. But I'm not sure it's necessarily, I have the privilege as an outsider of not being subject to those pressures, and so I don't feel it's really my role to try and enact change from outside. I've been lucky to be in a place where it hasn't affected me, but I'm just kind of an observer of it. So there's certainly things that I think are a little bit outdated, like in the way family structures are. And it's not to say that there's nothing good about it, but I think having more choice for individuals to kind of settle where they would prefer in terms of their own role in the family or how long they want to keep working or anything like that would certainly be preferable if possible.
So I guess in your city there's no expectations, girls can be completely free of choosing whatever life they want.
Pretty much. I mean, I think to the extent that there are pressures, it's that when there's some pressure to have children, but it's nothing like Japan. And there's some pressure to get married, but a lot of that is it's both cultural and from the individual. I mean, people separate from the pressure to have a relationship with someone. People do want to have relationships with people, and so it's really not. I think it depends. In the case of the U.S., it's very regional and very much based on your individual family and what they think. There isn't quite so much the overarching this is the life path expected of you by society. If your family is a little bit looser, then you don't really feel that much pressure. If your family is very more traditional, then maybe it is more like being in Japan. But I think there's maybe a much greater variety of individual experience, at least in some places in the U.S. Certainly, I mean, America is far from perfect, in the realm of both gender roles or anything else. So I don't think we're necessarily in a position to just criticize the way things are in Japan. It kind of goes both ways.
Right. Okay.
What is your favorite place to go when you have free time in Tokyo? Where do you like to go?
Honestly, this is related, but my favorite place to go is the grocery store. Well, I mean, I know I'm very much like a homebody, but it's a, what do you call it? It's the kind of grocery store where they have things that normally, it's sort of a restaurant supply store almost, but individuals can go there, and so they have a lot of both imported stuff and really cheap Japanese food. And so that's kind of similar to when I used to live near a farmer's market. I'd go buy tons of vegetables. Now I go buy tons of vegetables from this store. And it's kind of fun because I only go once a week and I get everything I need for the whole week. And then the rest of the week is just about being creative. How can I make this last a week? But, I mean, that's a lot of fun. I used to go a lot to used bookstores to get cookbooks and such. Now I have enough. I don't need to go to it anymore. So
Sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think one difference between where I lived before and living in Tokyo is that in living in smaller cities, to go anywhere I had to go through downtown because there's only one station or one big bus center. So I'd kind of go out, even just my normal commute, walking to the station, I would see all these things. With Tokyo, living more, it's not suburban, but in more residential area, it's you can kind of walk to the station and get to your workplace without having quite as much of the main life of the city around you, which that's fine too. I like it quiet, so either way.
What are your plans for the future? What do you want to do in the next 5 years?
Well, I'm getting married this fall, actually, so I'm
Awesome.
excited. Yeah.
Congratulations.
So that's probably like the big thing I have to plan, coming up. We're gonna go back to my hometown in the U.S. for a little bit this fall, and then I'll come back to Japan. My current plan is maybe not stay in Japan for my entire life, but maybe at least, I certainly wouldn't mind staying for like 10 years or however long I can keep extending my visa for. I really enjoy life in both Japan and the U.S. So.
If you get the chance to raise your baby here in Tokyo, would you prefer to do it here or in your city?
That's a really hard question. I think in terms of, like I said before, it's really easy to get around. It feels very safe. So Tokyo and Japan have a lot of advantages, but there's also a lot to be said for being near like your own family members who can help with things like that, like my parents or whoever else. That would be a really hard decision. That's probably not anywhere in the near future, so I'm planning to think about it.
Sorry for that.
No worries.
Okay, so to finish, could you please send a message to the people who are not in Japan and they're still thinking about coming to study or to work here? What would you tell them?
To be open-minded and be open. Like, some things might not strike you as being good at first, but they might turn out to be really wonderful in the end. Like, I mean, it's a silly example, but the garbage division is really annoying, and especially it can be kind of intimidating if you're not used to it. But there's lots of things that can turn out to be good points that you might not realize at first. And also, I would say, don't expect, someone might tell you your experience is going to be like such and such, and you'll feel lonely at this time or whatever, but everyone is different. So be open-minded both about what it's going to be like for you and what you see when you actually get there, I think.
Okay, thank you very much for coming and thank you for doing this interview. Thank you.
Thank you.